Alright, what's up sim racers? This is Larry at TGR Sim here, and today we're checking out Assetto Corsa VR settings with the Samsung Odyssey HMD. So you probably already seen, if you didn't, look for my Assetto Corsa. Maybe I'll put it up here in the top of the corner for the VR settings for the Rift. Now the Odyssey obviously has higher end screens like you've read, and it actually does make a pretty big difference. It is kind of more of a revolution. It's not like it's an evolution, I guess is how people would say it. It's just higher end screens, but they seem to tax your CPU as much, or not as much, but a lot more than say the Rift does. So you want to have a decent, I'm discovering that you want to have a little bit decent CPU, maybe a higher end, was the Skylake or the X299 platforms, where you have like the 8700K CPU. You probably won't have as many frame rate drops with the higher end CPU like that that I'm experiencing. I'm running a 4930K, which is pretty decent which was top of the line at the time when I bought it, like 5 years ago. So you know, technology progresses on, thankfully. So I'm running a 1080 Ti, which was a big difference from the 980 Ti as far as up in resolutions and stuff, with just the Rift itself. But today we're looking at the Odyssey, obviously. So just give you a little bit of background what's going on. Let's jump into the settings real quick. Now, the Steam VR, if you saw the Rift settings for Assetto Corsa, they're a little bit different. You don't have to go into like an INI file in Assetto Corsa and go to your open VR file and adjust your super sampling there, like you can with, say, the Rift. This one you actually just control all by Steam. So go on to settings real quick here. You will notice developer, and you'll want to keep the where it says allow asynchronous and interleaved off. You want to leave those off. You don't need them. The Odyssey has its own asynchronous built in. It's very, very smooth when it kicks in, like the Odyssey, the Odyssey is very, very smooth, like the Rift is as well. So you hardly notice it kick in. Oops, I closed it out. So come back, and you want to look course for Assetto Corsa. So here's Assetto Corsa. You'll notice I have 170%. Now, oddly enough, the super sampling is not as critical in Assetto Corsa as say it is with Project Cars 2. And what I mean by that is that I can set this down to 20% and still have my settings up high, let's say on high shadows, and it still hits 45 FPS. The only difference is the screen's very blurry. You can't see it, nothing. Now, where I noticed, you know, messing between the settings of the in-game settings and going back to the super sampling, having everything turned down and just going one by one and seeing what affects what at, say, one super sampling of 1.3 with high settings on shadows. You know, what does that affect? Or, okay, let's move it to medium shadows. Did I improve my frame rate? That kind of thing. So it took a couple weeks to iron it out in my spare time. So I've come to 1.7 or 170% that you see here as being optimal setting. You can have it at 1.5, 150%, and it looks good. But you still have a little bit of blurriness on the screen. Once I go to 160%, the blurring almost completely disappears. And then 170% the blurring is gone. I don't see it anymore. And this is like, you know, 200 feet in front of your car, and I'm not talking about an eighth mile down the track. All VR is a little blurry an eighth mile down the track. So just how it is. Now you can go up to 200%. Some people lock it in at 200% and forget about it. I haven't noticed any increase in visual fidelity between 170 to 200%. So why tax your GPU anymore, or your CPU anymore? So 170 seems to be the sweet spot. Now, going into the settings, your resolution here really doesn't really matter, and full screen doesn't really matter so much. I generally have it on 1080p or 1080 when I'm doing just racing by myself, and full screen off, just so I'm not regenerating a full screen on this big widescreen that I have, as well as taxing it on the Odyssey as well. So, but in testing here, it didn't seem to mess with my frame rates any. Now, vertical sync, leave off. Frame rate limit 92 is what I put it at, because you're only gonna hit 90 in your well, I'll see actually 91 sometimes in the headset. But yeah, 90 is what you're seeing. I guess it'll read in the game like 91 at times. But anyway, anisotropic filtering 16 times. I've played with that quite a bit actually, between going with higher super sampling and then try to get my FPS up higher. I'd have to drop this down to 8 or 4 or 2 and play with it that way. At the end of the day, crank it up to 16, and having your super sampling at 1.7 or 170% works fine. Anisotropic filtering is more of your distance filtering, making things look smoother. Anti-aliasing, have it at 4. You put it at 2. You do save a little bit, 1, 2 FPS, a couple FPS, but everything's jaggedy looking. It just doesn't look as good. Especially when you're looking at fencing and stuff like that. World detail actually makes a pretty big difference. If you drop that down, I keep it on minimum because I care about more the flow of the race, as opposed to rendering extra stands or people standing around, because it's not like the people look great in the game anyways. They're standing around, so you still seem to have billboards and stuff like that on minimum. So I leave it on minimum. If you want a little bit more ambiance, crank it up, but you will have to lower something to crank this up. So you'd have to play with that. So I'm trying to get the smoothest, gameplay with the highest frame rate 90% of the time. So that's what we're going for here. Shadow resolution, I have it on medium normally, not high. High is good. High looks pretty good. There's no really difference between high and ultra for my eyes in the headset. Medium is kind of the sweet spot. Now, if you put it on low, you will save some frame rates. So if you're struggling with your GPU, crank this down to low. That'll save you some, 5-10 FPS. But low looks a little bit more jaggedy, edges on the shadows, and medium smooth them out a lot more, especially when you see, like, as you're rolling around the track and the sun casting across your dash, and then see the shadow going across your dash. It looks more defined at the edges of the shadow. High looks better, of course, but at a cost. So I'll run medium. Let's see, effects. Now I don't run any. I don't run any post-processing effects. There is a little race room, somewhere on race room. I have it downloaded as well, but you can go and change your effects here, natural mod and all that. And it's supposed to give it more of a natural looking scenery. I haven't noticed it actually working. Maybe I did it wrong, but I don't think I did. And what you have to end up doing is leaving this on default, and then launch the mod that you want basically for the game. But I haven't noticed any difference. I have tried this in the game. It just hurts your FPS, and I like a little bit warmer looking track anyway, where with post-processing it looks too overexposed to me. So I leave it off. One less thing to contend with, especially with FPS. Now, going up to smoke generation, normal looks good. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. You can go, what is it? You can go high, I think, and ultra. Ultra's unnecessary anything in VR, really. Ultra is kind of defined for high-end screens with people with high-end graphics cards, anyways, for a 2D screen, not VR. So high is obviously you're going to see a little bit more smoke generation, but on normal, you see the smoke, come up when the cars are off track, linger around and stuff for quite a while. So it works good. Show your smoke and mirrors. Excuse me. That's good. You can see it in your mirrors when you're looking back. I like it on. It doesn't seem to tax your FPS any, so I would leave it on just so when you see someone behind you going off track, you can see the smoke kick up. So obviously the racing's in front of you, but to each your own. So anyway, view, nothing to see here, guys. So we won't even waste your time there. Reflections. Now, mirror resolution on normal. The cars are pretty well defined in Assetto Corsa on normal. They, you know, you can tell you got a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Beamer behind you. Identify the color scheme on it, all really well. Especially with the Odyssey, you can see them a lot more defined than say the Rift to me. When you pump it up to high, it looks even better. It actually looks like a 2D screen when you're looking at the mirror as far as resolution goes, looking through the Odyssey. So that was actually kind of impressive to see how good the resolution of the cars in your mirrors looked. The high quality mirror reflection, that seems to only come into play when I run mirror resolution at high. When I run it at normal, I don't really notice anything, but in either way, it didn't affect my frame rate, oddly enough. So I would leave it off because you don't notice nothing in normal, and who knows, it may affect it at certain points of the track. I just didn't run into those situations, you know. So if you had a bunch of smoke in the mirror from cars going off track, you know, you may dip down into the asynchronous mode, and just because you had that on. So I'll leave it off. Reflection quality on medium and the frequency rendering on low. If you put this on static, everything looks kind of cartoonish. You don't see the reflections kind of roll around on the car as they're rolling through the curves, you know. So it just looks plain, not good at all. So I'll leave that on low. Medium seemed to just hit my frame rate a little bit more, and low looked almost as good to me. So I leave it on low. Reflection quality, obviously the higher you go, the better it looks. High being the highest one, but medium is very good. Like I said, the cars looked like a fresh wax job on the cars, you know, so they look good. I think it's a good compromise. So now here's the big kicker. So got all these settings set up, and how many opponents can you have on track? This actually plays a bigger role than any of these settings. So in combination of trying to get a right combination of super sampling, shadow detail, a high number of opponents, it took a little while, like I said, to get it figured out, but I came up with 8 opponents. Now that's not mind staggering. I mean, if you go to a track, you're racing 8 other cars. I mean, that's not uncommon, but anyway, 12 is usually what I like to have on track because that's kind of what your in-game races are for like the championships. But it's not going to happen at 12. You're going to be at 45 FPS the whole race with 12 cars. You being the 13th. 12 opponents, rather. I messed with it one by one, and yeah, it takes a hit for sure. So 8 is the sweet spot. You can obviously crank this down to like 5, and then say go turn up your world detail a little bit more, and have a little bit more immersion in that way if you'd like to. So, you know, there's some compromising to be had there on your part, but just reporting what settings I have to kind of give me the best experience with the Samsung Odyssey. So hopefully those settings work for you. Let's jump in a race. I'll show you what I'll talk you through what I'm seeing. Now it's going to look a little skewed on your screen because I guess because this is in widescreen and full screen. This is the second or third video I was doing here on this thing. So, but I can at least identify the stuff I see. So now, first thing you'll notice in this is I'm looking at the back of my chair. So, you know, control and spacebar is your friend. Now, sometimes in this you will lose mouse movement with the Odyssey, and then you'll have to hit your Windows key and Y key to bring back the little yellow mouse that you see on the screen. So just to keep that in mind if you run across missing it. Now, what I'm seeing in the car, you know, a neat thing I want to point out about the Odyssey compared to, say, the Rift. I never owned a Vive, but I imagine it's the same, is your range of looking around. You can look, I mean, you can do this in the Vive and stuff depending on where your sensors are, pretty good, but if I go this close where I'm looking through my steering wheel, my sensors are a little bit behind my monitor and it wouldn't see me doing this. So it would skew my image. So you can look really far down and around. It's really neat with the inside out tracking that you can do a few little bit more things than you could do with, say, the Rift, which is pretty cool. I like that little aspect. Now, as far as graphics inside the car, it look good. It look real polished. I can tell my traction control's on 3, my ABS is on 3. It's pretty well defined. Everything you see is fairly defined. I'm snapping it around here to get it straight. Now, I can see that it says left on the top wheel, and then set, and then flash, and I can't see what it says under that red button unless I come in about right here. It says fade, or page down rather. And of course the other one says map. So you can see small lettering a lot better. Not perfectly crisp, but definitely way more crisp than it is in, say, the Rift. Shadows, now what I was talking about with shadows, like that roll bar reflection there, a little bit more jaggedy. The higher you pump up the resolution for the shadow detail, the better it gets. I noticed kind of like at these shadows down here by this box, they're more pointy looking. When I upped the resolution, or the shadow resolution, they got more defined and just more defined and crisp. So anyway, let's jump in the race, tell you what I see. You will notice usually around 45 FPS at the beginning of the race, just because you're all jumbled up, but it does quickly go away. I do have my motion on because I really don't know how to sim race without motion anymore. And of course I'm talking, so I'm probably not going to sim race that great anyway. You can see 45 FPS there. Cars look nice and shiny. Still in that 45 FPS. And let's see. Good smoke on track. The cars look shiny. You see the sun reflection going across the back of that caddy. So the settings I have are pretty good for that. I do see a little AC creates going on right now, finally, in 45, and it's odd, actually, to be honest, that I'm still in the 45 mode. I'm generally already around the 80% right now. So, you know, I think it's, and I can tell I have a little mode turned on in my HMD that I can tell I am throttling. Now I went to green, a little indicator in my HMD that goes from green to blue. Light blue telling me when I'm hitting my CPU. Green when I'm doing fine, basically. As soon as it hit green, now it's blue, it went to 47, now it's green again, it went to 62, 82. My voice is juddering from the shaking of the motion seat. Anyway, it tends to, you know, fluctuate is what I'm getting at. It's not perfect in it, but it still looks better than the Rift. So if you were to get one, first of all, if you're going to just get one headset and all you were going to do is sim racing, then the Samsung Odyssey has a cleaner picture. But if you want to double duty and do sim racing and just VR gameplay with the wands and stuff, I think the Rift's the way to go. It just has better hand controls. But what I do notice with between the Rift and the Odyssey is that the downtime is a lot less in the Odyssey than it is in the Rift. Just as far as it locking up or losing tracking, having to when it goes into sleep mode, having to re-wake it up, where the Odyssey all you do is click on the little button that says wake up. So, and it has voice control in the Odyssey, so when you're setting your seated position, it comes up, the first screen says or you're doing a standing position or a seated, you don't have to go turn on your controller. You just tell it seated, and it clicks it. You know, so that's actually kind of handy in sim racing for when you first put on your headset, just to let it identify what type of game you're about to do at first setup of your, or first startup rather, not setup, startup. See, that car looks good. I'm about to run into it, but it looks good. You see good, little bit of flicker on the back shadow of that, where the license plate would be on that car. Still running 88 FPS, 89, and that's down the front straight with all these cars. So it's really good. It seems to settle in, especially half a lap in to 1 lap in. Get off of me. The FPS seems to settle in. Of course, obviously you see the cars are off. I can see that that's a white car going around that corner way down there in the headset. I don't remember if I could identify that quite as well. I don't think I could with the Rift. So I can see definitely a little bit further. Just quick observations on those. Now also, sliding around. These cars look really defined in my mirrors in the HMD, which is good. Obviously, if you put it on high resolution, they look like I'm looking at a 2D screen then, but right now they're definitely really well defined. We're still holding around the 89.7 FPS, so that's awesome. Nothing jaggy around here. You got a little asynchronous going on with that fencing. Not asynchronous, I'm sorry. A little AA filtering going on where they look a little bit, I don't know, skewed. But that's just the silver fencing, how it looks. This blue fencing, you don't notice that. Car looks good. Trying to just kind of stick around the car, see what happens. They need to put a bloom effect on the taillights in Assetto Corsa. Of course, they're not going to because they're done with development, but it's really hard to tell when their taillights come on. Unless you're just right on top of them like now. But if you're at a distance, it's hard to tell. But man, this car looks good. The lines are well defined in the HMD. I'm about to run into them. I'm still running, 90 FPS, so yeah, nothing to complain about. Woo-ha! Anyway, I think that's probably enough testing to give you a slide. You slide through the whole thing there. That was fun. Probably enough testing to give you an example of what I'm seeing, but you're looking at it on a 2D screen, so it's going to look a little bit better. It's going to look a lot better than what I see in my HMD, but what I see in my HMD looks good, really good. I'll go ahead and stop it here, let these cars go on by. So, yep, there they go. There's another one. There's the caddy. Another thing, when they go pass by like that fast, they look fast. They don't stutter going across the screen, and that's kind of the biggest thing I've noticed between the Rift and the Odyssey. Maybe because it's utilizing, see that car looked fast going past me under braking. Maybe because they're utilizing some CPU usage as well as the GPU, but I seem to get less stutters with this headset, which I really like because it doesn't break my immersion. I'm not very sensitive to the asynchronous mode. I mean, I notice when I go into it, but it's not like it makes me sick or anything like that, or it's just like it looks like a horrible blurry mess to me. Yeah, you can tell it gets a little bit more blurry. I like that, but with the Rift and the Odyssey, you both are going to hit it. There's not a graphics card out there that keeps you out of that mode anyways right now. Yeah, that's just how it is right now. And the game development isn't far enough along to be optimized, I don't think either. So I think you got several things going on: optimization of games for VR, and then as well as the hardware working. Man, those cars are moving pretty good. Anyway, that was my thoughts on it. That's my settings for VR settings for. Damn, the car's hauling ass too. For Assetto Corsa. Here comes some more. Let's see what it look like. Yeah, they're getting it. Anyway, anyway, I can play this game all day long. Anyway, I'm gonna let you go, and we'll catch you next time. Leave the comments down below if these settings work for you, or if you have better settings to share with everybody else here that you found that work better. Go ahead and share them. Oh, just one note: the settings for the Oculus itself are on automatic. You got a choice of automatic, low, high, and very high beta. I run it in automatic. Honestly, can't see the difference between that and high or the very high beta as far as my screen resolution goes. Can't tell the difference. So leave it on auto. From what I understand, that's kind of more optimal for trying to keep your frame rate and smoothness of what you see working well. So anyway, that's it. We'll catch you next time on the track. I'm out.